Yeah, I love the G3 RS, but I hate where Porsche thinks they are.
They get too much glaze for what they
Yeah, have you seen the thing where it's like Ferrari style? You have to buy Cayennes, Taycans, this many to buy the new GT3 RS to get the opportunity to pay them. My favorite part.
That's a steal.
Yeah,
So
but
if you buy a Honda Ioniq 5, you're actually saving money instead of using money.
yeah,
Follow for more tips.
Si-
Hello and welcome to another episode, pretty much the season finale for this little segment of Keep It Simple with Bro.
Season 1.
Season 1. I mean, technically season 2. I don't know how seasons work, but
It works however we want it to work.
Season 17. But yeah, rocket propulsion is what we're doing today, brother.
That is one of the coolest things any child likes. Rockets.
I want to be an
And
astronaut.
adults.
I want to build what astronauts are flying.
And then we could fly in it.
That sounds cool. You
Yeah.
can do that.
Should we trust you?
No,
Okay.
not yet. Give me some time.
But after this video,
After this video, we can even trust our viewers.
no.
No? Imagine all 385 million of them.
Yeah, that there is.
Yeah,
I'll trust one of them.
because everyone in the U.S. is actually going to be watching this video. And some people from India somehow. I'm watching you guys. I don't know.
We love you, Punjabis.
I don't know how you found this video.
Yeah, we'll make a second channel just for India.
Yeah, it's Indian translation from Ra.
I translated.
But yeah, so today we're doing rocket propulsion.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start off with the way rocket propulsion started. So thank you for joining us. Let's get right into it. Rob's going to be looking into the stars and even further beyond.
Like your eyes.
It's a risk. So, funnily enough, rocket propulsion actually dates back like 800 years. Maybe even further.
I didn't know we were flying to the moon back then.
We weren't.
Mm.
We were using it for war.
Oh,
Technology.
that's where we get so advanced. War.
Yes, sir. So everything in the world, for some reason, starts with war.
Mm-hmm.
This specific thing started back in China around the 13th century or 14th century, like
That reminds me of the
1340-ish.
popcorns. You know how they make popcorn, like the Chinese, where it was like an explosion. They'll put the kernels with like some sort of like not black powder, but something, and it would explode and make popcorn. Put a video right here. Sock was confused too, but you'll see. He said rockets. What it reminds me
that
of.
makes
But the
sense.
Chinese, it was the Chinese that were doing this.
Oh, the Chinese were doing some crazy stuff with explosives.
Or might be racist. I'm mixing it up with some other kind of ethnicity, but we'll see.
Most likely the Chinese. Because what we call China today was like a massive group of people. You know, there are like 1.5 billion of them now?
Yeah,
That's like a lot of countries in one that is now called China.
yeah.
But super cool stuff. It stemmed from the use of gunpowder in like little tubes of bamboo. And they would cover one side and basically use it as fireworks.
That's like how guns work now. Just in a bullet. Gunpowder on one end, and then it propels
Snap
something on the other side. Yeah.
Exactly. So these early fireworks were just little like tubes of bamboo that were filled with gunpowder. They throw them up and be like, "Wow, that's sick." Slight problem: whenever you have an explosion that's being controlled to like come out of one end, it's not very stable. So whenever they'd light these, there was a very high chance that it'd go like, "Oh, phew! Oh, oops! We hit Mingli. Sorry, bud." But so start off as that. Some cool religious celebration ceremonies going off.
Yeah.
Around the 1300s, they realized, hey, we can kind of use this as a bomb. So they started strapping them to arrows. And so you'd have like a little stick of bamboo filled with gunpowder on an arrow. You light it, fire the arrow, and then pow.
Crazy range. Oh, not only for range, actually, for an explosion.
Just an explosion
Okay,
at the
okay.
time. And they realized, like, after a little bit, they're like, what if we just put this on a stick and let it propel itself? Because, like, it goes boom.
They made the first RPG.
They did. They literally did. Rocket propelled.
Bamboo. RPB. Rocket propelled bamboo.
Yeah.
Well, what was it shooting? Or was it shooting the stick itself?
Well, when you
When they were using it as a weapon.
Here's a nice little Asian man depicted using this RPB.
What's his name?
His name is Tao. So Tao would set it up. They have him set up in like little lines, right? And the advantage with these is that you can have a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you can set up like 50, light them all, and then just you
Yeah.
know.
Almost like fireworks.
It's literally just
fireworks. Yeah.
And then again, they would still have the same issue where like sometimes they'd rear off course and like hit like Henry in the back of the head.
Yeah. My nephew. How you doing when the rockets hit him?
Poor guy, man. So these were first used in war, and what they did was they strapped them onto like long poles, and they're like, hey, like if we leave one part open, it creates a lot of force. So they were just yeeting the rockets over.
Yeah.
These weren't that like bad. They weren't that deep. It's not doing that much damage. Like.
But they're onto something.
They were onto something. They were kind of like instantly replaced the second they realized cannonballs are cool. Because if you load like a metal ball and just like yeet that to the other side, it does more damage than like a little bit of like bamboo flying. And so yeah, that's how it all started.
I know that China is like just a small video I seen where they were the first ones to like make fireworks, and like the advancements in firework, not talking about weaponry, is crazy even today. That they do, yeah.
Shout out to China for the fireworks. But yeah, this was all using Newton's third law, and so it's the kind of the principle of reaction. Any what we've been talking about this whole time. Same with jet propulsion. What happens is that any force you make has an equal and opposite reaction. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And so that's the entire principle of rocket propulsion. You're heating something up and shooting hot gases out. And the difference, as we learned from our last guest, of rocket propulsion and jet propulsion is that rocket propulsion kind of has all the ingredients within one little tube. So everything that's being burnt is this fuel. There's no outside sources coming in, so there's no like oxygen from outside coming in. It's all from this like arc little contraption system.
Yeah.
And so these are.
But there's no oxygen in there. Just that it's pumping it is what you're trying to say.
There's methods of that, but we'll get into that. This specific rocket, like what they were using, it's just a tube of gunpowder. They light it from the back, and the gunpowder is what burns.
Yeah. And
that burning up is creating like a chemical reaction. And it's just shooting out air, and that's what's creating the thrust that's pushing it forward.
Yeah.
And then they've stuck with that for a while. In the 18th century, some dude from England was like, hey, we have rifling now. When you spin a bullet through the air, it travels further more accurately. What if we spin this rocket as well?
Interesting.
And so they added kind of like, well, there's many different methods, but there was fin stabilization that they did.
Yeah.
Which is kind of something you still see today, where like they have little fins at the bottom of the rockets, and that helps it
stabilize.
Stabilize, yeah. Back then, it wasn't like automatically controlled. You can't really do it without electronics. So they'd have a little spin at an angle, so that the rocket would go like choo 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 choo.
Yeah, but that would still help it a lot, even though it's not like computerized.
Funnily enough, the word rocket comes from the Italian word from rochette, which is meaning little spindle. Here's what a spindle is, because I had no idea what a spindle looked like.
I don't know what it is either.
It's the thing you wrap yarn around when you're spinning on like one of those
of
machines.
course.
And for some reason, those look exactly like rockets. Like they have a little tail, and then they get like thick, and then it has like a little point.
Thank you, Italians, for rockets.
It was just a name.
Yeah.
But they have good naming systems, great designs. So we got the stabilization, huge step forward. It took like 500 years after the Chinese were using it for like artillery, but cool step
progress.
Forward. Progress is progress. And so we keep that in mind, right? Newton's third principle. Every action equal and opposite reaction.
Of course.
Now, we move forward to the dawn of modern rocketry. Just a fancy way of saying people started using rockets for rockets in big forms instead of just like fireworks.
Yeah.
So, I want to have you guess, Rob.
Yes.
Who do you think the first group of people that used what we like call a rocket today were? It's been a trend that these people have had great technology.
Oh, okay. America. No?
Close.
I was gonna guess ISIS, but I'm like, never mind. That doesn't make sense.
Send them home.
Yeah.
Use your telescope in the other direction.
They're known for thing.
Yeah, so
I need
this
to
group
guess
of people,
I need to guess.
also known as the Germans, more specifically in World War II.
The good guy. I'm kidding.
So the Germans, the first rocket developed was
Yeah.
an intercontinental the ballistic missile, like the first one legitimately used.
I should have guessed that.
And it was
honestly.
also the first rocket to like touch space because it was an intercontinental ballistic
ICBM.
long range guided ballistic missile. I don't think it could go too far from one continent to another.
Yeah.
Like it didn't reach America.
Yeah.
But it did reach up to 120 miles in the air, so technically touching space. And this was the first man-made object able to reach space. So shout out to man.
Crazy
yeah,
shout out there.
Yeah. But, I mean, technology is cool either way you look at it.
Yeah.
Because now with an understanding of this thing, super fat, chubby guy, I don't know how big it was, but it looks pretty big compared to a human being. So I feel like it does a lot. Oh, we actually have a video.
Let's put that up here.
This is the video right here of what it did. Explosions are cool to look at, not so cool to be around, apparently.
Can you explain why?
Well, because these were liquid-propelled rockets. So that was the next step in understanding how, in like the next big step in rocket propulsion. So instead of having just a solid in there, they would have a little mixture in there. So what you were just talking about, where it is oxygen mixed
By
with,
solid, you mean gunpowder instead of having that in there? What do you mean by solid?
for example,
Okay.
gunpowder. So, okay, let's get into this one first then.
Let's get into it.
There are three main basic types in the modern age for rockets. There are cryogenic rockets.
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero is indeed also known as cryogenic. There's solid fuel rockets. And then there's liquid fuel rockets. Technically, cryogenic is also liquid, but okay. So starting off with solid fuel rockets, because that's what we started off with in the world.
Okay.
So solid fuel rockets are, you have a solid fuel and you have an oxidizer. But the only thing about that is, once you light it, there's no going back. So it's huge amounts of thrust, but you can't turn that off.
Yeah. It's
You
not
can't
controlled.
control it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not controlled. So as soon as you light it, like let's imagine it as a big barrel of gunpowder. If you light the barrel, you're not stopping that gunpowder.
Halfway,
It has
yeah.
to go all the way through that, and that's how just solid fuel rockets work. So they're one-time use. They're mainly used for thrusters in spaceflight today. So you know those things that fall off of rockets. They're
Yeah.
typically it depends on who's doing it, but usually they would have been solid fuel rockets because solid fuel rockets provide you with the most, like the simplest way to achieve high thrust.
Mm-hmm.
They're also one-time use, so that you can't really like reuse them again. You just fill it up and then,
Unless you're Elon.
yeah, shout out.
Yeah.
Him we can't shout out, right? Okay. So they're super simple. You don't have any control over it. But they're also used in missiles. Because if you're shooting a missile, you don't really care what happens.
I need to get it back after it does its job.
But yeah, the next step would be liquid fuel rockets. And liquid fuel would be what you were talking about, where you have a liquid and then you have an oxidizer. And so what that just means is that you have your thing you're burning and then you mix it with oxygen and it turns into a gas that's being shot out.
Yeah.
That is very easy to control because you can control. It's like exactly how your car's engine works. You spritz fuel in there, you spark it up, and then you put your oxidizer, which is air for cars, but it's oxygen, like pure oxygen for rockets, and then that creates an explosion.
Yeah. And like the cars ECU controls that at all times. Like the levels of how much is going in there.
Exactly.
That's what we're trying to say. Yeah.
So it has like little nozzles in there, and you spray exactly how much oxygen you want, exactly how much of that fuel you want, and you spark it whenever you want.
That was the liquid.
That was with liquid.
Okay.
These are really high efficiency. They're kind of complex, but they're not like insane. It's not like you're doing it's literally
Rocket science. It's not like you're doing rocket science in these rockets.
But
What's cryogenic?
So cryogenic is kind of the most...
That's a very interesting one. I'm
It's
very
a
curious
most
about.
interesting name. It's kind of like the same thing as a liquid rocket. It's still liquid, but what you do is you take hydrogen and you take oxygen. You freeze both of them to like negative 200 degrees Celsius. So like 70 degrees away from like absolute zero.
Okay.
That temperature can range.
Yeah.
And what you do is you mix those two. So you're using hydrogen and oxygen. And have you ever heard of this thing called H2O?
Once, please tell me about this chemical.
So H2O is water. And so this chemical reaction
Yeah.
is literally throwing out steam. Or, yeah, it's water vapor.
So it's hot?
All of these are pretty hot.
No, but that was cold. Then why is it?
So it's freezing cold liquid because you're turning two gases into a liquid.
Okay.
So when you put them together, they mix together. Like whenever you're using any kind of this, they're mixing together and
Yeah.
doing creating a chemical reaction in order to produce thrust. But the cool thing about the cryogenic like breed of rocket propulsion is that it is creating water vapor. So it's not damaging anything around it.
Yeah.
Maybe someone like standing directly below it might get hurt.
Inside the rocket.
Yeah. But so like these, you can launch them up into the atmosphere forever and you'd never see like a negative impact. It literally is just creating rain. It's creating water vapor.
But is that used now? Like I've never even heard of this. Like companies use this to actually propel?
So it's super high efficiency. So it's a very efficient way of doing it. It's stupidly complicated because you need way more thrust. You can control it because it's a liquid liquid rocket. And it was used in a really popular application known as the Saturn V rocket, like the largest rocket that we've shot up.
Really?
I don't know if that's still true, but I think the Soviets had one that was bigger. But like, if you're being honest, like the USA is the only one that really matters.
USA.
So yeah, it was used in the Saturn V rocket and even the space shuttle.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
I thought it was like super niche market that would be using that because it sounded interesting but like weird at the same time.
It is, but it's just what scientists were like, hey, it would be kind of cool if we were able to like do this without like messing up our entire atmosphere. Right?
Yeah, let's fly with water.
Yeah, water is the most renewable energy we have. Like,
We're running out of it.
oh no, maybe clean drinking water.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the two main, three, let's say, because like cryogenics a completely different like ideology.
Yeah. But that was
like
the most
being
interesting.
vegan.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I love rocket propulsion mainly because none of it makes sense until you like dive too deep into it, and then it's like, oh.
I'm gonna take a step back.
Yeah.
No, it's complicated.
So yeah, that's all you need to understand. There's liquid and solid. Liquid's controllable. Solid, one shot and you go. You
Yeah.
can't stop. So going back to so the dawn of rocketry. That German rocket, it was known as the V2. Used in World War II, it was used as a missile, basically. It was a guided missile because they had electronics back then to that point. And they were like, okay, we want to hit this target. We're going to start our fuel. It's going to burn. So it has its, like, let's say methane is their rocket for fuel they're using. Methane is very common to use these days. That's what SpaceX typically uses. I don't know if they still do. I feel like that's, as expected, it's classified information what their exact...
it's not public to every single person?
So yeah, they're using methane and they're using oxygen. And there's two huge fuel tanks. Here, we'll put up another picture for display because this is going to be...
I love visuals. I wish I could see them.
Same. So it's multiple little gallons. Like, let's say two big jugs. You have a jug of methane, a jug of oxygen, a jug of oxygen, and they're both in liquid form. There's a tube that connects them both to a nozzle, and that nozzle has like a spark plug in there, something to just create a spark so it lights the mixture. In that nozzle, it is going to have like an interesting shape. So it's like a triangle basically in the first area. The big part of the triangle is where like these fuels get mixed in. The little part, as it gets like thinner, is going to be going into like a little hole. And in that hole, this liquid that you're or this mixture that you're creating, you're going to use for thrust, is going to hit the speed of sound.
Interesting.
And it needs to hit exactly the speed of sound, essentially. It can go like a tiny bit faster, but you need to hit the speed of sound for rockets to make any sense. Because the way rockets make the most of their power is that they're not, or at least modern rockets make the most of their power, is that they're not just making an explosion and just like pushing that out.
For like one time, just one explosion, and it flies.
So what they do is that they make that explosion. All of that air gets compressed, and so whenever you compress air, you're reducing the volume. Reducing the volume, but it's still trying to keep its same pressure, which means it has to go faster.
Yeah.
So you have to funnel more air through that hole, and once you hit the actual
Don't do that motion, please. Thank you.
Once you hit this little middle section, and when you're hitting the speed of sound, everything you've known about physics, which for most people is we don't know shit about physics. For me, I don't know anything about physics either.
Yeah.
Once you hit that point, everything you know about physics changes. Because now you're dealing with a compressible flow that has hit a supersonic, that is going supersonic. So what I just told you, where like if you've reduced the volume, you have to increase the speed.
Yeah.
Because the pressure is rising, or the pressure has to stay the same. Now, it's for some reason the opposite. When you increase the volume, you increase the speed, and you increase the pressure. So now, you know how those the rocket nozzles, they get tiny and then they get huge? So that huge part is them controlling how fast the pressure goes. So that's what's actually generating your thrust, that little segment that goes like that.
Interesting.
So it transfers your little explosion, and it uses crazy math and physics in order to just multiply the power that you're gaining from it by a lot.
Didn't we talk about something like that with the other rockets, or we talked about rockets for the spaceships?
The turbofans and stuff?
No, we talked about rockets once, where the
nozzle generated one, yeah.
I think so.
We mentioned that when we were talking about the cool AI generated rocket that you showed us, where it has like the crazy like lines around it.
Yeah, but then you explain or actual rocket where like that part where it gets bigger. It's like the bigger, the better of how much thrust it's showing. I'm talking about like the SpaceX's rockets.
Yeah, so technically you could think of it like that, but then you also have to manage a lot of aspects, which I truly don't understand. I'm not a rocket scientist yet, working on that. But so if you look at like, let's say SpaceX's rockets again, they're Merlin rockets. They're not that big. I mean, they're bigger than a person.
No, but they're much smaller compared to any other rocket.
Exactly, yeah. So they're tiny. But they generate way more thrust than like we did with the Saturn V rocket.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And that's engineering. So they're using like efficiency to try and figure it out. They're still using a liquid-fueled rocket that's still basically using methane and just oxygen. But they've figured out a way to kind of shape that object and create like the perfect like mix for how much power to weight ratio you're making.
Yeah. You know? Obviously, the heavier you can't if you just keep giving it more power, but it keeps getting heavier. Yeah.
Rocket. There was actually a so in school I did a little research project for my rocket propulsion class. It was kind of like studying all the different rockets people have made. And the one we got tasked with was like the largest rocket engine. And it was just massive. It was cool. It made like a good amount of power. And then some dudes, one of the groups had the more recent project from the ones used in the Saturn project. I was like, okay, cool. Or no, the ones used in the space shuttle. That's still like 40 years old or so. But that engine was making like 2/3 of the power our engine was making, but our engine was literally like 4 times bigger.
So it's worse, technically.
So it's way worse.
Power to weight ratio is not. Yeah. It's not there.
And when you're going into space, every gram is like $10,000. So
yeah.
Maybe think about that.
Also, the SpaceX rocket's also much cheaper.
Really? I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Especially if you could reuse it, so it's even more cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Oh, also they use kerosene. Remember jet fuel we were talking about?
Yeah.
Kerosene is also used in rockets. It's also rocket fuel. Another cool section that was introduced in this. Instead of having rockets just be a single stage where they just push it through the whole way, I'm sure you've seen in many rocket launches, they have segments of it where they drop off. As we were talking about boosters.
Yeah, one part drops off, another one ignites.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So that's where kind of fun part of physics and engineering blends in, where people started making rockets that had multiple stages to them. So the first stage was like a solid propellant, let's say, because all you need to do is get out of the Earth's orbit.
Yeah.
So they would burn all that up going straight into the sky, and they're like, okay, we're far enough away. We're going to detach our first stage, and you see like a big tube falling out of the sky. It's like, that's
Oh, half the rocket fell.
oh no, they failed. And you see another rocket light up, and now there's a liquid-propelled rocket that they can control.
Yeah.
And they'll use that to guide themselves out of the atmosphere and maybe into space.
Yeah. It's always the hardest, right at launch off, just because of gravity and being in the atmosphere. You need the most power. Isn't like most of the fuel they have used at just getting out of the
Yeah,
atmosphere.
pretty much all of it is like 70% of it is what they use in the first like 10 seconds, it looks like.
Why don't they just start above the atmosphere?
That would be cringe. That also that also ruined the whole idea of a rocket.
Hey, we're trying to make better rockets.
They do that with there's hypersonic planes. Super complete random thing because we're not talking about rocket propulsion right now. We're talking about jet propulsion,
Okay.
which you
Don't get it mixed up.
Don't get it mixed up. So NASA was doing testing for hypersonic aircrafts, and they were using this thing called like the X-Bow or whatever is their plane. But you can't use it because it was using like a ramjet engine, ramjet engine, which only works if you're already going past the speed of sound by like a lot.
Okay.
So unless you
If you're not, it doesn't work?
no, because you need to be
More-
ramming air into it. That's
Yeah.
where the name is from apparently. So you ram air into this engine or into this jet engine.
It's the only way you can get enough air.
Yeah, and then that's when it starts actually producing energy. So because it doesn't have a fan or anything to pull air in there, it's literally just like and just waiting for air. But once it starts going, that thing's not going to stop. Like you could hit like 4,000 miles an hour with just that engine.
Interesting. But you need something else to propel you at that speed.
That's the engineering aspect of it, brother. Go join their team.
That doesn't sound like the best plan. I don't know. To me.
That's what kind of makes the aircrafts like the SR-71 Blackbird like really cool because it was able to do supersonic flight like at Mach 3, so 3 times the speed of sound, and it's also like fully self-sufficient. Like it took off on itself on its own.
Landed on its own.
Yeah, it didn't need like another bigger plane to just drop it from the sky.
Yeah.
Shout out to the 1970s Lockheed Martin team.
Skunks.
Skunks. As always, my leg's asleep now.
Yep.
Um,
Kill the other leg now. Make the other one fall asleep.
So back to that V2 rocket. First rocket we're going to say, even though it literally says V2, implying that there was a V1.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah. So it was able to reach speeds of 3,500 miles an hour.
That's a lot.
That was in 1940 something. Somewhere in that
Yeah.
section. I don't know what was happening at that time.
Those high numbers didn't even exist back then. You used to go to... After 2000, they couldn't count.
2.
Yeah.
And it reached an altitude of 120 miles. Now, if we compare that to the very first liquid-fueled rocket that was made by Robert Goddard. Super cool. I think he was American.
Yeah.
Sound American, right?
Sounds a little British.
No.
Good.
God, I'm gutted that it wasn't an American. It's got a crazy record. In 1926, it flew a total of 41 feet before failing.
Hey, better than the Chinese.
I feel like you could go higher if you just chuck something in the air.
Yeah. But is that range or is that up?
That's just straight up altitude.
Interesting. How do you measure?
Well, when you see something go up and then pop, it's like, wow. I don't think that went great. But it was, as always, you got to fail a little bit to go forward. But it was a great test.
What was he? Was he in the military? Mr. Robert?
I don't know. I didn't do too much research about Robert. I was more interested.
I mean, that's very interesting that he does, like, he
was
did
a scientist.
that. Cool guy.
Funnily enough, the actual idea. All right, moving on to space exploration. Our
Okay.
next topic. It's like the next step in rocket propulsion. They
Let's
use
explore.
it to blow each other up. Now, more important.
Now, let's blow each other up and go to space.
Exactly. So this first idea of it, funnily enough, like sending humans to the moon, obviously like people have thought of it before. But there's actually a book by this French dude. Oh,
What? Where's...
I don't want to pronounce this.
Wait, I want to pronounce it. Where is it?
Okay.
It's French. You can't butcher it. They're not going to be offended.
Yeah, I don't know any French people or anything.
I do. One of my...
I want you to read this title of the book.
Let me... Oh, I thought the name. What?
His name?
No, what's the thing that's hard to read?
It's just it's just a book in French.
Oh,
in
the book
the early 1800s, like 1830 or so. Let I promise I have this.
You have any relations with the French?
I do. I love the French.
Jules Verne.
Our beautiful boy Jules Verne.
Is that a guy or girl?
It's a guy. He was like actually a really famous guy at his time,
Okay.
and then like later in life. What is it called? He wrote a book called like it just translates. Oh, it's literally right here. From the Earth to the Moon. It sounded cool.
That's so hard to.
It was like "Et la Terre à la Lune." I was like, cool, but I feel like if I pronounce that, I'm gonna get like hate mail. But yeah, so in his book From the Earth to the Moon, he was like, the main idea of it is like these people are like trying to go to space, and they're trying to go to the moon specifically. And so he kind of thought of like the first like manned flight to the moon, except his rocket was like a massive cannon that just shot people straight to the moon in like a big
solid propelled rocket.
something along those lines.
Yeah.
I wonder if his cannon had rifling though.
Make him spin.
Instant death.
On his shoes, put some fins, and then he just yeah.
Yeah, he wrote that book in like the mid 1800s.
Long time ago.
It was scientifically flawed, as we might have guessed.
Hey,
You can't shoot a cannon. What?
but it's worth a try. I mean, it's impressive for that time for him to be thinking about these things.
He's
you
also
know?
not an engineer in any way. So I
Yeah.
feel like that was kind of a cool thing. It's like, you're just imagining it.
Yeah.
And someone's like, low key, I think I could do that. And so a few years passed, like early 1920s or so. This Russian lady, I think it might have been a man. The name sounds very, very feminine, but I think it might have been a dude. But this Russian person, just like last time with stealth,
Yeah.
was like, hey, I think I could do the math to figure that one out.
Yeah.
And so she made the calculations for like what it would take to get to the moon. And then you couple that
With a cannon or with
not with a cannon.
Okay.
With like a rocket propelled thing.
okay.
And so this inspired people. So in like the mid 20th century, as you might have already guessed, we have landed on the moon. I know
Yeah.
some people
Once or twice.
say it was fake.
Yeah.
Once or twice, yeah. Like I think like just like 2 people alone have landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Once or twice, you know? So in the mid 20th century, there are this development. They're like, yo, the Germans did this really cool thing. It wasn't that cool once we saw it, but like we could use that for something cooler.
When they're using it on us, it wasn't pretty cool. But
Yeah. Like this dude had the idea of putting people on a cannonball. What if we put people on rockets? And what if instead of using rockets for just to like throw rocks really far away, essentially, what if we use it to transport humanity? And what if we use it to reach the stars? And so that's when the space race began. And that was during the Cold War between like the US and the USSR.
yeah, my favorite times in life was during those times.
All the craziest tech came from there, dude.
Yeah.
So they come in there and they're like, okay, we're going to use super cool, the cryogenic engines. We're going to use those. It's going to be awesome. We're going to pull it off. Tons of failures. I don't know if you know this, but like the first, I think it's called like, what is the one that, it's like number 14.
Yeah.
Human man flight number 14 was the one that made it to the moon.
Yeah.
The one-
No, they started at 14. Nothing happened before.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a lot of failures.
Hey, on the way to success, you got to be failures.
Yeah, get rid of a few lives by accident that were super valuable to you. But
The first thing they
They got
think, like the rocket explodes. Dang it. That was
Yeah,
expensive.
oh, they were. I don't know if what was more expensive, like going to the moon or making the B-2 bomber. The B-2 bomber cost $2 billion per bomber, so it's gonna be hard to beat.
Yeah.
But yeah, they get these rockets. They're like, okay, we know solid propellants are cool. We're gonna use those to get us off the floor. We're gonna use liquid to actually control getting to the moon. And they're like, how do we come back? It's like, well, you need more liquid. Okay, so we'll use a very nicely controlled one. It's like, well, how are you gonna make sure that it works even in space? Cryogenic. Don't worry about it. And so they took all these different ideas, they put them together, and after all the great successes of not getting to space, the Russians got to space first. This homie named Yuri Gagarin, super cool dude.
But did he touch the moon?
He didn't touch anything,
Exactly.
but he was the
Who
first
cares?
guy to see
I'm in
the
space
sun
too.
rise above.
Look.
Technically speaking, you're right. You are space, actually.
I am mass.
It's a lot of.
Lot mass.
So
Yeah.
Russians got a dude to space, to orbit. So technically to space. He landed after like a few hours. Cool stuff. He got to see space. I mean, he got to see the world, and he got to see the sun rise from above the Earth and like set. Because he was kind of like orbiting the Earth, so a lot of movement there. And the Americans were like, that doesn't count. Just because you got to space doesn't mean you achieved.
You didn't touch it. You didn't touch it.
Yeah, I touched it first. Touch your keepers or whatever. And so they got all these ideas together, finally reaching the moon. People called them fake liars. Find that hilarious. Although I don't know.
Fake liar. Rather than real liars.
No, they're fake liars. They not only did they lie about having the tech, but they lied about using the tech too.
Interesting.
I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah.
I didn't say anything.
I see. Well, remember how we talked about the Saturn V, where you were like, hydrogen, or the cryogenic thing?
Yeah.
Where they were using hydrogen and oxygen. It sounds kind of silly. It's like, okay, well, they're not using that anymore because it probably doesn't make enough thrust. It's probably like really weak.
That's what I thought, yes.
Well, this thing called the Saturn V rocket, the largest rocket, to my knowledge, because I don't really know much about new technology.
But say confidently, and that's fine.
It generated 7.5 million pounds of thrust.
What? It's more than your M4.
It's a little bit more. I think I could take it in like a 0 to 60, but like anything after that, it's over. But so
it's not weak.
It's not weak. I mean, it was literally the fattest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Therefore, it took a lot of power to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Therefore, it had a lot of power.
Because it did actually get off the ground.
It did get off the ground. It was a successful flight, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was multi-staged, crazy boosters. And another crazy booster example would be the International Space, not the Space Shuttle, not the International Space Station. The Space Shuttle had two solid rocket boosters. Solid rocket boosters on each side. They're bright orange. So if you ever need an example, I know we've all seen this thing. There you go. And that was one of the most powerful solid rocket-fueled rockets ever flown. So we haven't gone too far in terms of just flexing with numbers in a while.
Yeah.
Mainly because we don't have a competition.
Yeah, we need some more competition.
The Chinese. That's what they're working towards.
Yeah, bro. Talking about tariffs, this, that. Just make rockets. Go to war. I mean...
We would be the ones going to that war, but I don't know if I want that.
I'm kidding. Just make better... We need... Competition always helps the advancements.
That's why every war has led to some crazy benefits.
Yeah.
Especially if it was like peer-to-peer war. Or if your enemies are like better than you, then you really need to be trying. That's what happened in World War II.
Yeah.
And won. Last final random thing. You know that Verne guy, the French man who wrote the book?
Jules Verne?
Wow. Oui. For some reason, super random coincidence, his cannon was shot out of Florida. That's where...
What is he doing there? That's where GTA 6 is going to be located.
Really?
Yes. Was that what you're going to say about Jules Verne?
No, that's actually crazy. But that's also... it's the theoretical idea is spaced almost exactly where the current space station launch site is.
Yeah. That's
I
pretty
don't know what kind of crazy stuff he was
doing. He was
doing,
on to something, bro.
He was. Florida, for some reason, is great for shooting. Speaking of shooting. There is an island... Don't tell anyone. It's Cuba. That the U.S. made a massive gun, like a huge artillery thing, kind of like the cannon we were talking about at Verne's,
Okay.
that they were trying to hit satellites with. So here's another picture.
I think satellites are a little far away.
They're a little far away, so you need a lot of power to hit them. And they're like, okay.
And they're like, wee, so it's kind
They're
of...
moving a lot, yeah. But they thought that with this project, because the Soviets were putting satellites into space, they didn't like it. It's like, we got to be able to get rid of them. Because how are you going to hit a satellite? With your own satellite? That's expensive and dumb.
With your own satellite? Kamikaze satellite with your...
That's the only way to get them.
$1 billion satellite.
So they're like, okay, we're gonna build a cannon. It's going to be cool. Never succeeded.
Yeah.
But it could shoot pretty far.
Was there pictures?
There's pictures. That's what we're putting up here. It's a huge gun. Cool gun.
It actually shot something.
Yeah, they tested it a lot. They tried to hit stuff in space.
What year is this? Around.
Cuba.
I said what year? And you
what
said
year?
Cuba.
It was in the Cold War. I think it was between the 70s and the 80s.
Okay.
So while someone was building up the design for the SR-71 Blackbird, another dude was like,
we're gonna shoot the satellite.
we're going to shoot it really hard into space.
Lockheed Martin, like, I don't know what's going on out there, but just...
And then they actually realized that they could just shoot satellites into space with that instead. And so they tried that out. Still didn't work. But cool little idea. That was just to show you can only go so far with certain technologies. You can't be stubborn. You got to be adaptable and be ready to change.
Yeah.
That's why you're ready to change your shirt. We're going to a wet t-shirt contest.
Adapt.
But moving on from that was in like the 80s, 90s, around that year. Now we're going to the modern age. We're talking about SpaceX, Blue Origin.
Huh?
We're talking about SpaceX.
Amazon Prime ass rockets.
Yep. Made of paper-thin walls. Today's rockets, lower cost, way higher efficiency, and they're actually reusable.
Yeah.
That was like the craziest thing anyone had ever heard of in that field when Mr. Elon Musk was like,
What if we just keep it? What if we just reuse it?
I don't remember what, like, there was a video online that, like, you could see where, like, he's like, his pitch for SpaceX was, I'm going to put a car into space or something silly like that.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, not everyone, but, like, some people are like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I think there's a lot of people,
like,
everyone.
Pretty smart guys, but I feel like you're going to figure this out.
Yeah, most people, you're right. It was a lot of people that are like, all right, this guy's cracked.
Yeah.
And he was.
he definitely, there was a lot of failures.
Yeah.
At least there weren't manned missions.
Yeah.
They tested with non-human beings for their to figure out how to make it reusable. Super cool little fun fact. SpaceX was about to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Tesla wasn't doing so well. Elon Musk's like, what if I just put all of my money in this company instead? So they had like one more launch, trying to prove this reusability thing. And that's like the most famous launch that everyone probably saw, unless you like were born 10 years ago and then you were a baby, so you have no idea. But that's the first time that they were able to land a rocket back onto the ground.
Yeah.
And it didn't explode.
Unheard of.
Unheard of, ever.
Yeah.
And they had been failing at it. Like, they had like 15 like failed attempts before they got the first one to land.
That's one more than the U.S. When they were at the space shuttle.
Technically, yeah. So the U.S. is doing better. Or NASA is doing better. But they got that to land. And they got like the next one to land. And that's when people started investing into SpaceX, like legitimately.
Yeah.
Like actual like money owners, not like human beings.
$50.
Yeah. Everyone bought a stock. So with that, they had a couple of successful ones and they failed again. But like, it's fine. They already proved that they could do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they were testing more stuff, bigger rockets, smarter rockets, faster rockets. And their thrusters were also getting better as they were going. So they were getting more efficient. They were somehow getting smaller and more thrusty.
Nice.
More thrusty, my favorite.
That's the engineering term that he used. I need more thrusty, guys.
Guys, you have to be more thrusty. We can't keep doing this. But yeah, the innovations that came around this time were crazy. And that was kind of like led by lots of failure and analysis. Computational fluid dynamics that we talked about before, where they now have computers that are able to simulate what would happen instead of having to see it for their own eyes and be like, oh, so that's what $1 billion on fire looks like. Now
there's a quote where he says, not a quote, but like an interview, he's like, whenever one of the rockets didn't explode, he was surprised. He's like, what? Because like, he's like, he expected them to explode so he can learn from it. But he's like, when it didn't, he's like, what the heck's going on? Why is it working?
Succeed?
Yeah.
That's so weird. But yeah, then booster reusability became a huge thing. And now we're able to like, instead of being like $10,000 to get something to the moon, to space, it's more
per
like,
gram.
Yeah, per gram. It's probably more like 2,000.
Cheap.
That's, relatively speaking.
We both pitch in. We could get some hair follicles in there.
Yeah, right. If I sell my car, we might be getting a candy bar. Candy bars are expensive. Maybe a fingernail.
A whole fingernail.
But yeah, the key concepts of like the modern era are making methane engines, so the liquid engines, cleaner. We don't want to hurt our environment. Easier to store, so they're smaller, more compact, and Mars refuelable is the idea there.
Mm.
Because the end goal of SpaceX is to colonize Mars, essentially, right?
Yeah.
At least get humanity up there. Well, sometimes it'll be cool if we could send those rockets back, if they want to make them purely reusable, or if we need to send humans back. So an idea that they have is that they're going to create a design that's refuelable on Mars. So they're going to set up their little gas station for space. So space gas stations coming soon.
Invest.
Invest in
76 is going to be on the way. Stop by and get some protein bars.
the number one competitor. So yeah, also with these, like the Falcon 9 reusable thing, another key point, as we mentioned, hugely reduced cost.
Yes.
So instead of having to be government-funded billion-dollar contracts every single time, now it's a multi-million-dollar like private company doing it.
Yeah.
And there's also multiple competitors trying to do that same idea, making spaceflight affordable. So Blue Origin, as we mentioned before, they have different ideas. Their rockets look a little silly. No offense. But
No, that's cool.
not as cool. They don't have the pointy tips. They're like conical. Like SpaceX's are too, but like Blue Origin's. You get the idea.
Let it speak for itself.
Yeah. So and now, artificial intelligence. Recently, our boys coming in, making up completely unheard of designs in unheard of ways of using it. Where do you think it's coming from, Ralph?
AI.
I mean, no, I mean, where do you think the AI is getting these ideas?
Where it's getting its ideas from?
Yeah, like where? How would you?
Program it to like think of these things.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Because like, what do you base
Just
it on?
give 'em-
Old rockets?
yeah. Chinese bamboo rockets.
Well, what if they're reusing bamboo? Wood
Bamboo
rockets
is
coming
being
back.
used to go to Mars and come back. Same bamboo.
That does make the one.
Yeah.
They're fueling it with bamboo.
Explosive bamboo.
There you go.
But how? How are they
I don't know.
feet? No.
So I'm just saying, it like just comes up with random designs that like
Oh, I mean that's the cool thing where you could just, like rush through like 4 million designs, and then an actual person that's like programming. No, no, no. One has to work for a giant breakthrough to happen.
true.
Like,
All you need is one, yeah.
yeah, I have many failed songs before I make my best songs on the Suno AI app.
With the
So-
great drive home songs that we use every day.
Yeah. But that's the way to go. Where just like someone that's just like super cracked out and just like saying like whatever ideas, and then that's what AI is. So we're just like,
Like
taking-
eventually one of them makes sense, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, shout out to artificial intelligence. Hopefully they get us to way bigger technology leaps.
Let's get to the sun.
Yeah. Let's get to the sun.
Energy's free there.
Dyson Sphere coming right up, dude.
Dyson Sphere? I've heard of that.
Dyson Sphere, super cool
Yeah.
idea. If you haven't heard of it, it's the idea of humans
Having a
harvesting-
super powerful vacuum. Sorry. What's it? I'm talking about Dyson's new vacuum
Yeah,
that just
go
came out.
I think I'm more interested in that one. But Dyson, the company, is named after a scientist,
Yeah.
and that scientist had an idea of civilization being able to harness the full power of the sun, or at least like 80 to 90% of it.
Which is a lot of energy.
That's a lot. I don't know if you know this, but the sun is very powerful. It's a lot more than like the energy we use currently, or we could use in like 100,000 years. But the idea of a Dyson sphere is you encapsulate the sun in these kind of like solar panel things, and so you harness the entire energy you're
And
creating.
you're just sucking the power.
Sucking the power, basically. And so that would help kind of propel humanity into a crazy like technology.
You said
But, like,
a little bit. Help a little bit, I guess.
But like also the fun thing about that is like, do you know how much materials you'd need to go around the sun in like a thin circle, let alone entirely around it?
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. Like you got to get rid of like Mars, Venus, Pluto, and then maybe we have a chance.
We'll worry about that later.
Yeah. That's for the guys in the future when they start creating like metal out of air.
Yeah, Elon Musk's grandsons.
Yeah, there you go. What do you mean? Henry's gonna do it.
Yeah, easy.
But now that we know what's going on right now, what do you think the future is? We talked about AI, but AI is not just going to be making like liquid fuels forever or solid fuels forever.
Yeah.
Getting into one of my favorite topics:
Yeah, let's hear it.
deep space travel using advanced nuclear propulsion.
Mm,
I feel like
this is a one-way flight. This is
One way for the launcher and for the people on the
yeah. You're gonna go to space. You're not gonna be alive, but your body is for sure gonna be in space.
So I love that idea. And if I had like,
Is it just continuous explosions?
that's what I honestly, that's kind of what it looks like. That's kind of what the concept is, but no one has like an actual way of doing it. There's ideas. NASA's published lots of work because NASA's cool, and they take research that their people do, and they're like, "Hey, public, figure it out if you can." We don't really know.
Or you can't.
Yeah. So the idea of nuclear propulsion is using nuclear fission or nuclear fusion to create energy. And so you know how we created that like hydrogen bomb?
Yeah, sick.
Yeah. It's like splitting an atom in half or whatever, the atomic bomb. Well, that creates a lot of energy, and they used it for an explosion. And it makes sense because it's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And it's very fair. I mean, I don't know if it's easy to do, but it looks fairly simple. The idea of it is just cut something in half, and it makes a lot of boobs.
For our next episode, we're gonna make one.
We're going to cut an atom in half.
Yeah.
See how many times we can cut it in half before we can't cut it anymore. So nuclear, so there's direct fission, which is where you use a nuclear reactor to heat up the propellant, and the nuclear reactor is entirely made from like splitting atoms.
Continuously?
Or maybe one time. I don't really know how they're going to do
How do
it.
you even control that? Like, that propulsion in one direction.
You're asking a great question. You're going to need a crazy housing. Like, you know how they have the, like an exhaust pipe?
Yeah.
You're going to need the best exhaust pipe the world's ever seen.
Yeah, like
never
what
seen.
material that's gonna made out of.
Resist the nuclear explosion. We'll figure it out eventually.
What if this is a stupid thing? What if it's a tinier atom you cut so it's not too crazy?
Well, when you split an atom's supposed to be the smallest thing in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the time of figuring this out, but then like they came out with like quantum physics, which
Yeah.
is smaller than an atom. Nerds. But like the atom is the smallest thing in the universe essentially. So you can't go for like a smaller atom. You can go for a smaller
A
element
skinnier
that has
atom.
less atoms. One that hasn't had much food.
Yeah.
But yeah, so nuclear fission, split an atom, cool. Then there's thermonuclear fusion, which is when you slam two atoms together, they create another one. Or you slam two things together, they create a new element or something like that. And that generates energy because now you're creating something out of kind of nothing. And the impact generates power. And so this is what the sun does.
But isn't that also like that thing where?
The hydrogen collider?
Yeah.
Yes,
so it's
it
like
is.
a couple miles long.
It is.
Have that in a in a rocket.
Funnily enough, there is actually a company working on like a car-sized particle collider.
That any one of us can buy.
Maybe. Eventually.
Collide our particles together.
At home fun experiment with the kids. But yeah, like the technology's coming there. And I thought it was really cool that we have one that is the size of a car. Because most of them are the size of like a whole city.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So eventually, you can replace your V8 engine with a single spool engine that just slams atoms into each other.
Just slamming them together continuously.
Imagine the thrust you'd get on that thing.
Yeah, instead of oil change, you got to go switch your atoms.
Just drop in another bottle of water or whatever. But yeah, if I could choose to do anything with my life, it would be to create nuclear-powered like space flight.
You know what? With the help of AI, I think you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, well, I'm doing. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna have to bleep that one out.
That's fine.
We're gonna figure that out with humanity. AI could do the math for us on the side, but I feel like nuclear-powered spaceflight is how we get to something like the other galaxy, like Alpha Centauri. Everyone's like super hyped about.
Yeah, Alfa Romeo.
Alfa Romeo, best galaxy nearby.
Unreliable, but it is.
It's been pretty reliable. I think it's been
they're
there
beautiful.
for a few billion years. But so I feel like the only way we're going to be able to get there in like a reasonable time is using nuclear power. Line it up. Maybe go to Mars
Reasonable
before you
time.
pop the nuclear power thing.
Yeah.
Line it up. One big bang. You've got enough power to last you for years.
I mean, yeah, but you kind of GGing away from this planet. It's one way. Like if it's that far away, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. Speed of light isn't fast enough for you to go and come back and be like, "Raw for shooting an episode." Like
8 light years away or something.
yeah. So that's kind of yeah.
But like at that point,
We gotta go with some some wormholes,
that'd be cool.
bending the fabric of time. Bink. And
I
then
think we
just
should
teleport.
have an episode where we just spend the entire time talking about stuff that we don't understand, but I think it's really cool. Like
That's
wormholes,
a lot of
idea
stuff.
yeah. I feel like that'll be the best episode.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. That's gonna.
We just throw ideas. That sounds like fun. We just make crazy ideas of like real things, but just crazy ideas.
I would stick by. That's what we're gonna do for next episode. See how it goes.
Was
This is the season finale for Propulsion for now.
Yeah.
For now.
Thank you guys for watching.
But yeah,
I'm not trying to end the episode.
I was gonna say I'm like, there's still a lot of key concepts.
See you guys.
But yeah, so if you're trying to go deep space travel, you need that efficiency. You can't just use raw power. You can't just dump all your thrust right away and call it a day. You need to be able to have like one big bang that generates like 7 million like pounds of thrust. You know,
That sounds fun for the person inside. The G-force is on
that's
that thing.
another problem we
Yeah.
have to deal with. Yeah, but then there's also things called ion drives, which literally sounds like future tech because it kind of is. And those are efficient and they're going to have like long-term burns essentially. So it's something that's just going to be consistently going.
Interesting.
There's actually a system currently testing it. It's called Dawn, DAWN. It's a spacecraft.
Mm-hmm.
I believe also not rocket, also led by NASA, the huge. Anything like crazy fancy is like led by NASA or like a small group of dudes in someone's garage that's eventually going to become trillionaires. But yeah, so these ones would be using shooting ions out. The idea of it doesn't really make sense. It's very low thrust, but it's just like pew 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 pew. It's literally shooting ions.
So what if you get 1 billion of them shooting at the same time
Eventually, you'll make enough.
to make 3 horsepower?
Yeah. That's actually you could also call those like electric rockets. They're not really rockets at that point. It's just electric propulsion.
Yeah.
But like it uses kinetic energy to literally just shoot an ion. And because you're in space and there's no gravity or like anything stopping you, even the tiniest bit of energy generated by that ion being shot is going to send you away.
So very efficient, is what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Because you can find ions from everything you've ever seen in your entire existence.
Yeah. And as you say, it's a crazy idea, but Elon landing his rockets was a crazy idea.
Yeah. Imagine catching it with chopsticks. Some sturdy chopsticks. And then finally, there's a test plan for 2027. It's between NASA and DARPA, so National Agency of Space Exploration or whatever. Space Administration, I don't know.
Yeah.
Aeronautics and Space Administration. National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I swear I knew that from the start. And DARPA. I'm not going to try that one. They have this project called Draco. Sick sounding name.
From Harry Potter?
That was Malfoy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got hair like like this rocket does though. So this one is aimed at reaching another star using fusion.
What kind of fusion?
Nuclear.
Mm.
That all fusion is like kind of nuclear energy. Basically.
Yeah.
That's the idea of nuclear.
Fusion.
Fusion and fission. Just like anything to do with. This is going to be incorrect, but the nucleus of elements.
Yeah.
The stuff inside the center.
Nuclear.
It makes sense. So like, yeah. We'll stick with that one. I know you know that it's not right, but it makes
Who
sense.
cares what they know?
But yeah, so these fusion engines are perceived to generate thousands of times more power than they actually weigh. Because nuclear explosions are very hard.
So it's going to be just ton more power, much less weightish.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. By 2027, there's a test. It's around the corner, bro.
Yeah, well, they've been testing nuclear. So nuclear propulsion, nuclear rockets have been around since the 1960s.
Everything's been out since like the 1400s, and
The peak of human ideas was around the 1960s, and that was because of the Cold War, apparently. I don't know what's going on. But it looks like we're heading there now with China now.
We'll worry about that later.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the future. That's the fun stuff coming up. But for today, that's the end of our episode. You have any questions, final comments, concerns?
I love when you said, like, when who was it that thought, like, let's put a man on the rocket?
The French guy?
This was him?
Yeah.
I thought of this. I'm not going to say it, and you'll just see an edit. When you said he thought, let's put a man on a rocket and just send them off. And this is the video you put. This is what it reminded me of when you said that.
Okay.
But I don't want to say it
that
because it'll be funny. It would just be an edit.
Then that will be our ending credit. Once this video is over, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. Tell your friends. Tell your students. Tell your classmates. I don't know what you guys people hang out with, obviously. Yeah. But now that the video is over, maybe, check out this video right here. I don't really know how long the idea he's got going on.
This one right here.
Follow the telescope.